Having worked closely with Pep Guardiola, Enzo Maresca has developed a very clear tactical identity, with a heavy focus on team structure both in and out of possession. But while the positional play philosophy may have made Guardiola so successful, other managers have proven that it's not an overnight fix, and time, unlike money, is something Chelsea are not willing to spend. This raises two crucial questions. Does Maresca have the right players to make this system work? And more importantly, can he adapt his philosophy to suit Chelsea's immediate needs? To address these questions, we're going to be looking at the tactics behind Maresca's style of play, but we also need to understand the complexities of implementing this system at Chelsea. The appointment of Enzo Maresca caught a lot of people by surprise, not only because of the hilariously long 5-year contract, but also because of his seeming lack of experience coaching at the elite level. His championship-winning season at Leicester was certainly impressive, but there were mixed opinions on whether Maresca was too reliant on only one way of playing, with the second half of the season being a lot more inconsistent as fatigue set in and teams figured out their style. But what is his style? Let's start with the basics. Maresca falls into the category of positional play, with predetermined positions and rotations the players need to abide by in order to make the system work. These positional rotations are more easily understood by dividing Maresca's attacks into 3 separate steps. Step 1 is from goal kicks. Initially, the fullbacks will start out wide on the touchline, with the holding midfielder and one box-to-box midfielder starting extremely close together in the centre, while up top the remaining 4 players will start stretched out on the back line, moving and giving support depending on which flank the team moves down. The difficulty for the opposition is deciding which space to cover. If they sit back to help the defence not be exposed, they can outnumber the first press and move into midfield, while if they press more aggressively, then they will often look for long balls directly into the forwards to knock down between the lines. Having the 2 players in the centre be as narrow as possible and the fullbacks hugging the touchline, it frees up these central channels that Maresca wants to occupy in different ways. You often see the centre-backs move into this position as the goalkeeper is being pressed, or after longer passing chains, the winger or striker dropping deep and connecting play with third-man passes. As mentioned earlier, the position of the front 4 players is dependent on which side of the pitch they're moving down. For example, if it's on the left flank, one player will drop into midfield, with 2 players ready to attack in behind, and the winger on the opposite flank hugging the touchline. Here we can see a couple of examples of this structure, with the 2 midfielders in close proximity, and the fullbacks as wide as possible. Depending on the opposition press is when they decide whether to look for a direct ball or play it through the lines. By having the centre-back pass it to the keeper, it means he is instantly active in the play, and if the keeper is closed down, it frees up an outfield player. This channel is a crucial space used during the initial phases of attack. At times it's the centre-back pushing up, others it's the winger or striker adding support, or even one of the 2 midfielders moving up. Third-man passes are essential in this system, and the first pass from the front 4 is almost always a layoff into the centre before pushing forward. Once the goal kick has been taken and they've gained some control of the pitch is when we move into step 2. In this position, the goalkeeper is still very active in the team's move, but the main difference is that the right fullback will invert into the centre, meaning they can now have 5 players up top, and the remaining 3 defenders will stretch their shape, resembling more of a back 4 with the goalkeeper as an extra centre-back. Because of this man advantage, if the opposition close the keeper down, it frees up an outfield player. For this reason, the defending team will often sit back and not press the keeper, meaning Leicester have achieved control of the match. From these positions, depending on the height of the midfield line, they will often look for direct balls over the top as the defensive line is often isolated in a 1v1. In their 5-0 win against Southampton, we can see how as they gain control of the ball from a deep position, the keeper picks up a very aggressive position outside the box, forming a back 4, with the centre-back acting as the right-back and the right-back inverting into the centre of the pitch. The instant Southampton attempt to close down the keeper, it frees up players in the centre. After more prolonged possession in this area, the defending midfielders will usually move up to stop the central overload, subsequently isolating the back 4, which they will often find with long balls into areas out wide, where they can now try and outnumber the fullback or look to dribble inside. After they gain more control and move into step 3 is where Maresca has received some criticism for being too slow at times, with Leicester holding onto the ball for long periods of time and waiting for the right moment to play it forward. Across the Championship, Leicester ranks second for the most amount of passes per match, but ranked second from last for forward passes per 90, highlighting this slightly more ponderous approach on the ball that did frustrate fans at times. In step 3, the keeper can no longer push further up the pitch, and is no longer used in the active move. From here, the structure morphs into a very typical 3-2-5 shape that the majority of positional managers like to adopt. Quick side note, while Guardiola used this structure for many years, he has actually moved away from it quite consistently during this season, preferring an even more aggressive 2-3-5 shape, with the fullbacks out wide, the wingers in the half space, and the midfielders picking up the ball from the centre-backs in the half spaces either side of the opposition's midfield. But in typical Guardiola fashion, the team has become so fluid that the structure will continuously morph throughout the game. As Maresca stated himself in an interview, the 3-2-5 shape with an inverted fullback allows them to overload the opposition's midfield. If they're against a 4-3-3, it's a 4v3 situation in the centre, and they will look for the free player. While against teams that play in a 4-4-2, you often see the striker pair shadow mark the two midfielders to even out the centre. And in this case, the striker Jamie Vardy frequently drops into midfield to outnumber the midfield line, with the other players pushing forward and creating a lot of space between defence and midfield. Or if Vardy is followed into the centre, they will look to exploit the gaps that are left at the back. From this position, the ideas are clear and are heavily reminiscent of structured attacks from teams such as Arsenal or Man City. Whilst obviously there are many different routes they can move down, the main idea is to break the first line of pressure by finding the two players in the centre. From this position, given the defensive line will tighten up, the ball will shift out wide into the flanks, pushing forward as the box-to-box midfielders attack the half spaces, and the whole team can move up to control possession in the opposition's half. Statistically speaking, their numbers are relatively similar to Man City's. Whilst obviously it's not a one-to-one comparison, they complete a similar amount of through balls, crosses and dribbles per game, with cutbacks the only area that City are much more effective in. So now we have a general outline of Maresca's style of play, we need to see how this could be adapted to the current Chelsea team. And it's here where we run into the first major challenge I think Maresca is going to face. Positional play requires every single player to know where they need to be 2 passes before the ball even gets there. And it takes a lot of meticulous training and understanding between the players to get a feel for how it works. Arteta has been using this philosophy for 5 seasons, and has only now built a team that can nearly compete with Man City. And even Guardiola wasn't successful in his first season in charge. And this leads to the second point. Because it's so difficult to make it work, these managers tend to make as few changes as possible to the squad. Both Arsenal and Man City used the fewest amount of players this season, while Chelsea was some of the biggest changes throughout the year. Now, a lot of this was because of injuries, but essentially it took Pochettino a whole season to figure out who his best team was, and ultimately it cost him his job. The fact that Chelsea have so many players in each position, with each player having a completely different playstyle, I think will be the biggest challenge for Maresca. For example, let's start with the holding midfielder. At Leicester, it was Harry Winks. At Man City, it's Rodri, and at Arsenal, it's Declan Rice. But at Chelsea, it could be Caicedo, it could be Fernandes, or it could be Lavia. All of these players have their pros and cons, but ultimately they bring a different element to the game, and none of them are necessarily better than the other. If Maresca starts the season with one player in this position and it doesn't work, there'll be a lot of pressure for him to try someone else. And ultimately, this could be done with every position. If Jackson isn't scoring, then maybe Nkunku starts up top, or he'll try and squeeze Nkunku in on the left flank, sacrificing Mudryk or Sterling. All these decisions are arguably the most damaging thing for a positional manager, as these little tweaks and adjustments mean the other players need to adapt their style as well. And before you have some consistency, half the season has already passed. Let's not forget that the price tag for some of these players is also going to be a huge external pressure, as I doubt the board would be happy if £120 million Fernandes was sat on the bench all season. Ultimately, I think Maresca's success at Chelsea will be dependent on how quickly he finds his main starting 11 and the best player in each position. And time is absolutely not on his side. But now let's have some fun and see if we can come up with a successful lineup for next season. Firstly, there's still a lot of question marks on who should start in goal for Chelsea, with Petrovic, Sanchez and Kepa back from his loan, but all three don't seem to have the confidence and aggression on the ball that Maresca will likely want to start with, and I wouldn't be surprised if someone is brought in to this position. At the back, Chelsea's 63 goals conceded was the worst in their Premier League history, but with a slightly more stable end to the campaign and with players returning from injury, a back four of James, Colwill, Fofana and Cucurella could give them some consistency. The main question is understanding who will invert into the centre. Maresca inverted the right fullback Pereira during the season, but one of the main reasons why Chelsea's end to last season was so good was because of Cucurella's more central position, and in my opinion this would be more effective, as Reece James is much more dangerous in the final third, whilst overlapping or providing crosses into the box. In midfield, Chelsea looked good towards the end of the season without Fernandes, but chances are, given the price tag, both would be squeezed into the lineup. Both have their strengths and weaknesses, but given Caicedo's excellent aggressive defensive mentality, he could be used further up to disrupt any opposition's attacks, much like Kante's role under Sarri. And with Fernandes' slightly better passing range, he could help Chelsea progress from a deeper position. Cole Palmer, I think, should start as the other midfielder, being given space to roam between the lines, either adding support out wide or picking up more central positions, which made him so dangerous this season. Finally, the front three is another area in which Chelsea have a lot of options available, and the role of Jackson seems to be the exact replica of how Jamie Vardy was used this season, being very active during build-up and switching play. Whilst his finishing and efficiency in the box definitely needs work, Jackson was a key component in Chelsea's build-up, and I expect to see him lead the line next season. For this reason, I think Nkunku could be used on the left, with Madueke on the right. But let me know what formation you think would work in the comments down below.